Howie Roseman continues to make moves in NFL free agency as the Philadelphia Eagles have signed rotational backup defensive tackle Kentavius Street, according to reports. You're watching Philadelphia Eagles Now by Chat Sports. I'm Chase Sr. Appreciate all of you for being with us. Let's talk about it. So Adam Schefter breaking the news just moments ago here on this wonderful Thursday that the Eagles signing former Saints defensive tackle Kentavius Street, racked up not 6 sacks last year. Adam Schefter wishes that he used that edit button. 3.5 sacks last year for the New Orleans Saints on the 518 snaps that he played. He now joins safety Justin Evans as the second free agent this offseason to go from New Orleans to Philadelphia. And when I saw the news of this signing, I'm like, okay, Howie Roseman really filling out the depth along that defensive line, specifically at defensive tackle. And right now you're looking at this Eagles defensive line, and in that defensive tackle room that I think is in a pretty good position heading into 2023. Jordan Davis, Fletcher Cox, Milton Williams, Kentavius Street. It looks as though that's at least 4 defensive tackles. Now, obviously, Philadelphia could address that position in the NFL draft, and if a Jalen Carter, if a good player at defensive tackle falls to the Eagles on the board at number 10, at number 30, the signing of Kentavius Street is not going to keep them from drafting one of those players. I'm not even going to say he's an assurance, right, to make the 53-man roster, not a guarantee to make the final 53, but a backup who can play, who's a little bit undersized at 6'2", 287, but because he is a little bit undersized, does have that speed to beat some of those slower centers and guards on the interior of the opposing offensive line. So with that, we're talking about the Eagles' defensive line here, and I broke down the players at defensive tackle. And of course, this is an Eagles defensive line that led the NFL in sacks last year with 70 of them, led by Hassan Reddick, Brandon Graham, Josh Sweat. They're all back in the fold. So grade the Eagles' defensive line in the trenches, A, B, C, D, or F. We want to hear from you down in the comment section. And if you want to hit me up on Twitter, feel free to do so at Chase_Senior, by the way. I'm also on Instagram at Chase_Senior as well. Let's continue to talk about this Street signing as he makes his way to Broad Street. You see what I did there? 29 tackles last year with New Orleans as he signed that one-year deal after a couple of years with the San Francisco 49ers. 5 tackles for loss, 3.5 sacks, 0 forced fumbles. As you can see on the picture here, a little bit of a slighter defensive tackle as I was just talking about. Smaller in frame, but I do like his speed, and I like that quick first step. And this really does go in line with a lot of the moves that Howie Roseman has made throughout this offseason. He's signed a lot of players to these one-year deals who are either coming off a down year, haven't lived up to expectations, or are looking to go somewhere where they can thrive, where they can flourish to maybe up their value a little bit so that they go to Philadelphia, play on this good defense, and maybe they produce really good numbers, and then next year in free agency, they can make some more money. And in the meantime, they join a team that just won the NFC. They have another opportunity to compete and win a Super Bowl. It's a winning environment with the culture that a lot of players, both former and current, are raving about, led by Coach Nick Sirianni. And in a defense with Sean Desai, that always has pretty good sack numbers, whether he's a defensive coordinator. The 1 year when he was with the Chicago Bears, they were top 5 in sack production, or when Sean Desai has been an assistant. Those defensive lines have been pretty good as well because Sean Desai is a Vic Fangio disciple. You look at what Street has done since being a 4th-round pick out of NC State in 2019 by the Niners, only 3 games played in his rookie year. But then with San Francisco, really good defenses too, turned himself into a very good backup rotational defensive tackle. 2020, no sacks, but in 2021, 3 sacks. That's why he got that deal with New Orleans. Great defense with San Francisco in 2021, one of the top defenses in the National Football League. And then last year, I understand that New Orleans in the win column wasn't great. They didn't make the playoffs, but that defense led by Dennis Allen was a pretty solid unit. He tacked on 3.5 sacks. And if you can get that amount of sacks on a short 1-year deal, worth little money for a rotational backup defensive tackle. Pretty good bang for your buck, and it falls in line with what Howie Roseman looks for with some of these signings. Now, this is why you subscribe to us here on Eagles Now, because when breaking news happens, we go in depth on these signings. We break it down faster and better than anybody else, so subscribe and lock us in. We appreciate your support. Eagles defensive line, it's looking like this as of right now. You have Josh Sweat, Fletcher Cox, Jordan Davis, Brandon Graham as your starting defensive lineman. That's your front four, but also keep in mind that Sean Desai will run a multiple scheme. Sometimes these will be the 4 men up front. Sometimes Hassan Reddick will come up. Sometimes you get 5 in the box with these 4 and Hassan Reddick. Multiple scheme in which Sean Desai, I imagine, is going to try out multiple looks, but I'm starting to really like the depth along this defensive line. And after you lost Javon Hargrave, that's where you had some questions about what the defensive tackle room was going to look like, what this overall defensive line was going to look like, and how they would evolve after losing the 11 sacks from Javon Hargrave. But Josh Sweat had 11 last year. Fletcher Cox had 7. Brandon Graham had 11. You had Hassan Reddick, who had 16 and a half in the regular season, and then combined in the regular season and in the playoffs, he had 19 and a half sacks. But you're starting to fill out this depth as well, and that's going into the NFL draft, where I imagine Philadelphia going to address how they build their teams, inside out, defensive line, offensive line, and then they go to the other positions outside of that. Derek Barnett's going to come back off that torn ACL. You have Milton Williams, who I really like. He showed flashes to me last year. Kentavius Street now in the fold. You have Tipu Luto, who was also pretty good last year as well, as I always find a way to butcher his name. Then Janarius Robinson, too, who is also in the fold at defensive end. So for Sean Desai, a lot of pieces to work with up front here. And to really round things out, good depth signing for Philadelphia in bringing in Kentavius Street. He is a solid rotational player. He's certainly shown that over his last 3 years after really not playing much in his rookie year. Has he lived up to the expectations of being a 4th-round pick out of NC State? Yeah, maybe not. But at this point, he is what he is. And for Philadelphia to get him short-term, little money, even if you cut him and he doesn't make the 53, it really doesn't matter. He's played in 2 quality defenses, and now this will be a 3rd. Philadelphia was top 10 in basically every major defensive category last year when it came down to defenses among all 32 teams. And he takes that experience from San Francisco, the principles of that defense with D'Amico Ryans, and before that, Robert Saleh. Then last year, Dennis Allen. So we're talking D'Amico, Dennis Allen, 2 good defensive minds. And now you have the Vic Fangio, Sean Desai type of tree, being able to tutor him and teach him. And this is an Eagles organization that has always prioritized defensive linemen, but also has developed that position very well as well. And can you tap into that potential of him being that 4th-round pick out of NC State in 2018? The Eagles have had some luck with using smaller players on the interior. Shoot, Brandon Graham had probably the most notable play in franchise history against Tom Brady in Super Bowl 52, not as an edge rusher. That was Chris Long who was on that edge. It was actually Brandon Graham on the interior who was able to force that fumble of Tom Brady, which was really the turning point in that Super Bowl, and lock down a dub for the Birds to bring back that Lombardi trophy. So if you like what Howie Roseman has done, I want you to hit that thumbs up icon and like the video. If you don't, throughout this offseason, I want you to comment why. This is Philadelphia Eagles Now by Chat Sports. Appreciate all of you for joining us, and we'll catch you next time here on the show. And if you're watching right now on Thursday, we might be live, so come hang out with us.